Getting from point A to point B and shipping things from point A to point B has always been an integral part of most businesses, and it's always been a part of future visions for how the world could and should work. In short, transportation and shipping are topics that never really go out of style, so it's no surprise that it's one of the topics up for discussion at the World Economic Forum special meeting taking place in Saudi Arabia. I'm Cody Combs, your host for Business Extra, and this week we're recording this episode of Business Extra amid the hustle and bustle of the World Economic Forum special meeting in Riyadh. Of course, whenever the World Economic Forum comes to town, so to speak, that means hundreds of entrepreneurs, government officials, and thought leaders will follow, trying to address the most important issues of the day. Of course, that means making sure there's an economy that works for everyone and making sure the climate is not overlooked. It's at this World Economic Forum special meeting in Saudi that we cross paths with Robert Falk, chief executive of one of the hottest startups in terms of transportation, Einride. They make a sustainable and autonomous electric vehicle that can transport a lot of goods and services, usually carried by petrol-consuming lorries. He's also tasked with answering a timely question at this World Economic Forum special meeting: where will electric vehicles be in 2030? It's a question that usually conjures up images of Tesla's Elon Musk, but make no mistake, there are other players in the EV field, companies like Inride, which seek to transform the freight industry through digital, electric, and autonomous technology. We spoke with Robert amid the crowds at the World Economic Forum in Riyadh. Joining me now, Robert Falk. He's the chief executive of Inride. Thanks so much for joining us in Riyadh.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
So, to our audience, the basic question I have to ask, what is Einride?
Inride is a company that is specializing in developing and bringing forward technology for freight mobility. So we are specialized in digitalization, electrification, and optimization of goods transport.
What would you say your flagship product is? They look kind of cool, all the different things on the website. It's pretty futuristic, and that's the beat I cover. I'm the future editor, but even by those standards, it looks pretty cool.
Thank you, and that's for us, it's about bringing technology together and visualizing how the autonomous electric transport system will look when it's actually fully deployed and when it's actually up and running.
What would you say your flagship product is right now that you tout the most?
For us, it's for our clients, it's big companies that want to take advantage of this technology. They utilize digitalization, electrification, and optimization to have a very lean and mean setup for their freight logistics.
And you often tout on the website that there's no cabin in one of the vehicles. What does that mean, and why is that important?
One of the ways we do transport is through a truck that's completely designed for autonomous and electric. So it doesn't have a cab. It has all the technology built in that today's trucks doesn't have. So it's literally the future here and now. So that's something we've been live and operational for a few years on, and we're now in a phase where we're scaling into the Middle East, and we're super excited to be here. It's great ambition, and it's so many cool projects, and I think what we are doing would fit very well into that.
So I'm going to circle back to the Middle East in just a moment, but where can people see these automobiles on the road? Are they out there yet? Are they in certain locations? Who uses them?
We were the first in the world actually to get the permit to go on public road in Sweden in 2019. So we've been doing that for almost 5 years now. And we have a permit in Sweden and Europe and in the US.
When you hear about electric vehicles, a lot of it, the talk revolves around the consumers, basically, your mid-range consumers, your higher-end consumers. Do you think that sustainable shipping, which is the space that you're in, it gets left out?
Yeah, I would say that people have underestimated the potential. We see that 30-40% of the goods transported in the Western world should be done electric based on business case.
What brings you to Riyadh? Obviously, we're here at the World Economic Forum special meeting. There's a lot of different geopolitical themes here, but also energy is a major theme, and it's obviously not to be overlooked. But what brings you here, Inride in particular?
I mean, we're a member of the World Economic Forum, and we're part of the disruptor community there. So we think that the task for us to bring the world a little bit closer together. We also wanted to see here to come and explore the huge potential and also the ambition with the region. I think that autonomous will be probably scaled in volume first here in the Middle East.
We're here in Riyadh, but in 2023, you had some big announcement with regard to the Arab world's second biggest economy, not to be overlooked. That's the United Arab Emirates. How are things going with that? It was a memorandum of understanding. Is that accurate? Or
yeah, it was, and we have also now added a memorandum of understanding with Abu Dhabi. We now very closely going to announce our first big clients that's going to make this system come to real. So we're super excited what we're doing in UAE as well.
When you say system, I noticed you talk about it all. You don't necessarily talk about just one of the automobiles. Why is it you talk about systems? There's a grid involved, right?
Yes. To be able to do electric and electric autonomous, you need to think about it as a complete system. You have to have charging, you have to have digitalization, you have to have integrated with the customer's needs, and you have to see it from a system perspective to make it efficient and as it doable. Historically, you've seen it as one truck at a time, but when you do optimization, you need to think it's as a complete installed capacity. So for us, it's not just about selling a truck, for us it's providing an entire system.
How does one define sustainable shipping? Because I can imagine that people might take that phrase and run with it when it's not necessarily so. They might say, oh, this is sustainable shipping, but it's not. How do you guys define that?
I think the most important fundamentals when we refer to sustainable today is, of course, the pseudo emission reduction. I mean, that's one of the most pressing topics that we have. And what we have with electric autonomous is a business case for reducing the CO2 emissions. It's just the best business case, but if we can change this industry, we get the benefit also of reduced CO2 emission. And also, on top of that, we get the nice side effects of reduced NOx emissions, less noise pollution. So there's a lot of very positive effects from this transition, but the driver behind it at the core is the CO2 emission reduction.
Why did you pick the UAE to be such sort of a hot spot? We know that UAE has a lot of ambitions when it comes to autonomous technology, when it comes to artificial intelligence. Is there anything else about the United Arab Emirates that really appealed to you, Inride?
No, for us, we had colleagues that had a long background in the region. There was also high ambition. It's also become a melting pot of knowledge and progressiveness and the future.
We saw some of the renderings of the Inride vehicles on the road with the Burj Khalifa in the background. When can people in the UAE might expect to see something like that?
We have vehicles in the UAE already, so it's been part of the Abu Dhabi Fair, where we have an exhibition of vehicles, and we are starting to go live with operations, knock knock, already in this summer.
Do you have any business in Saudi Arabia?
Not so far, but it's super eager to explore the potentials we can have here. It's really a very intriguing market, and it has a lot of advantages for both electric and autonomous.
You're not just here as an attendant at the World Economic Forum. We should point out you are, in fact, going to be on a panel discussion. Where will EVs be in 2030? We cover the future beat a lot. And I don't want to spoil your panel discussion, but where will they be in 2030? Because, you know, we hear all the time, at least for me growing up, we always heard, oh, in a couple years, they're going to be everywhere. In a couple years, they're going to be everywhere. And it hasn't quite reached that turning point yet, but where will they be in 2030?
I think that's it's a fascinating question, but what we are, as humans, are quite bad at is actually making predictions. But we tend to overestimate a few things, and we tend to underestimate a few things. For transport of goods and driving, diesel and gas is actually a great technology. If you're going out in the desert, or if you're driving around, I mean, to have an electric truck or car, it's not optimal. Gas has a lot of advantages. And what I see from my side is that we're going to have a coexistence between electric and diesel gas for quite a long time, because these are very complementary technologies which have some strengths and weaknesses. And if you're doing daily commutes in the cities, electric is a great choice. And also if you do a lot of transports and repetitive flows, electrics will also be a great choice. Then you will have the heavy lifting and the transport of everything from heavy machinery to windmills. That will be done with diesel, because that's just a great technology. So the coexistence is something that I think we need to continue to develop. I think we will see more biodiesels being developed, and as well as electric taking more and more of the percentage of the mobility.
Is anybody else, any other company operating in the sustainable freight space quite like Inride? Or are you guys sort of alone in this?
There are companies doing similar things in China who have the longest experience of electric, and I would consider leading the technology platform for electric. But right now, it's no one that really offers the complete turnkey solutions to the clients, and I think that's why we're very attractive with our offer.
How are you guys with cash flow? At the end of the day, this is a Business Extra podcast, so I do have to ask about basics of business.
Yeah.
How are you guys doing?
We're doing well. We are fortunate to have both great investors and great customers, and we're in the scaling phase where we have huge, big contracts in the making. You have to always watch your cash flow. It's part of every business, but at the core, we have a very sound business.
I have to ask about Tesla, because whenever you bring up EVs, inevitably Tesla does come to mind for the layperson. How do you guys end up taking some of the oxygen away so people think of Inride instead of necessarily Tesla? Because they operate in different spaces, but you want to,
I would say that it's also about focus from our side. I think that for us, we've been focusing very heavily to make an impact to the customers that we have. I mean, I would say almost under the radar, we've become the biggest electrifier of heavy-duty freight transport in the world today. And the clients know who we are. They have a great respect for what we do, and we are making this change happen for them. We have clients, everything from PepsiCo to the appliances to Mesh to a lot of big names around the world. And they all trust us to make this transition happen for them. And I am very happy to let Tesla have there's a pros and cons to being a champion of something. And I mean, the long-term success of a company is determined by the soundness of the business. And it's pros and cons to be very high. And I think that Tesla is starting to see the challenges with that as well. But electrification is here to stay. And we're planning to be one of the companies that make this very successful.
What are some of the struggles that idea presents in the years ahead? Because it's not an easy task, but nonetheless, you guys are methodically doing it. What are some of the struggles you guys face?
No, but it's a changing environment and a changing ecosystem that still needs to take place. We're still having huge subsidies for diesel and gas around the world, and we need to get the new infrastructure in place for electrification. We need charging places, we need a commitment from the governments to support it. So the whole transition is something that is a struggle in itself.
5 and 10 years down the line, what's the first thing you want to come to people's mind when they think of Inride?
That we were the ones who made the autonomous electric transport system happen. That we were the first to visualize what the future will look like. If you play it down 30 years, transport will be done with autonomous electric vehicles just like the one we have. And we would like to be considered the ones that make that happen. And done 20, 30 years down the line, we would like to be one of the 4 or 5 big global companies that are the experts in autonomous electric transports.
There are always skeptics. What do you think the biggest misconception is people have about autonomous technology or electric vehicles?
That the range is the key enabler for electrification. For us, especially when you look at the B2B applications, it's not about the range, it's about the operational uptime. It's about securing that you can have the efficiency in the operational setup. And people quite often say about what is the range and so on. We never think about it that way. What we do is to conclude that roughly electric is 20% charge time per operational cycle. That means that you have to plan and optimize it for it. And if you do, you have the advantages that electric in most markets is cheaper per miles driven. And that equation changes how you have to think about the entire setup. And that's the potential, and that's what we're working with. But I think that's the most common misperception.
You've been all over different media outlets. You've been on CNBC, you've been in Forbes, you've been in countless publications. Is there anything that we in the media are not asking that you want people to know about your company or your vision? Because you've been asked a lot of questions. I don't think there's been a stone left unturned about your company, but I'm curious if there's something that you always walk away from and say, hey, you know what, I think this needs to get out there. Nobody's asking me yet.
I think that this is so interesting because people tend to underestimate the power of this technology shift. When you change transport technology, You literally changed how the map looks. And when you go play down the line, 20, 30 years, we would take autonomous transport solutions as granted. And for me, and this transition is as big as when we went from horse and carriage to diesel and trucks and cars, and the impact that had to society. And we're only starting to see the beginning of that. And it's not the future, like far off future. This is something you can go and see when we actually do it with customers. And that's back to your question, what's the biggest misconceptions of autonomous? They tend to see autonomous as something that's a one thing. When you start to say what's autonomous, most cars already have autonomous systems or automated systems. You have emergency braking, you have steering systems, they're all autonomous systems. The big question is what degree of functionality you actually have.
We should point out we usually do our Business Sector podcast in a very, very quiet studio, but we are here for all of you listening in the hustle and bustle of the World Economic Forum special meeting, so you're going to hear some ambient sound from time to time. Nonetheless, Mr. Falk, I want to thank you for your time, and thanks for joining us on Business Extra in Riyadh.
Thank you so much. Pleasure to be here.
That's it for this special episode recorded in Saudi Arabia. Thanks so much for listening. Please remember to follow us wherever you get your podcasting content so you can receive all of our episodes as soon as they come out. This episode was produced by Doa Fareed and Arthur Edison. I'm your host, Cody Combs.